or suddenly you witness a man's career, reputation, and life crumble in real time. You just don't know whose it is yet. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Officer Rick Halloway made a decision every cop dreads. He picked the wrong target. He saw a black man in a luxury car and assumed he was a criminal. He didn't know he was looking at one of the FBI's most decorated agents, Jeremiah Cross. What happens in the next 7 minutes isn't just a misunderstanding. It's a brutal collision of ego and justice that ends with a twist so shocking it brought an entire police department to its knees. Watch closely. The hunter is about to become the hunted. The engine of the black Chevrolet Tahoe ticked softly as it cooled down. The only sound in the otherwise quiet cul-de-sac of Sycamore Drive in Oak Creek. It was an affluent neighborhood. Lawns manicured with geometric precision, American flags hung lazily from porch posts, and the kind of silence that costs $500,000. Inside the Tahoe, Jeremiah Cross sat with the stillness of a predator waiting for the wind to shift. He adjusted the cuffs of his tailored Italian wool suit jacket to conceal the Sig Sauer P226 holstered under his left arm. On the passenger seat were a folder stamped confidential, a warm cup of coffee, and a pair of high-powered binoculars. Jeremiah, known as Jay to the very few friends he kept outside the office, glanced at his watch. 2:15 in the afternoon. He wasn't there for a drug bust or a bank robber. He was there for something far harder to prove. White-collar corruption involving city zoning permits and organized crime, money laundering. The target was a man named Arthur Penske, a city councilman who lived 3 doors down. Jay was 42, with dark mahogany skin and a shaved head that gleamed slightly in the filtered sunlight. He'd spent 12 years with the FBI, working his way up from chaotic Chicago gang task forces to the surgically precise white-collar crime division. He knew how to wait. Patience was his primary weapon. He took a sip of coffee, wincing at the temperature, and scanned the street. A delivery truck rumbled past. A woman was walking a golden retriever. Normal, boring, perfect. Then the rearview mirror caught a flash of white and blue. A patrol car, Unit 402 of the Oak Creek Police Department, slowly turned into the street. It didn't pass. It crawled. The shark nose of the Ford Explorer dipped as the brakes engaged, stopping 2 cars behind Jay's Tahoe. Jay sighed, a long, tired exhale through his nose. He knew the ritual. He was a black man sitting in an SUV with tinted windows in a neighborhood that was 98% white. He'd hoped the generic government license plates would be enough of a "do not disturb" signal, but apparently today was going to be difficult. He checked the mirrors. The patrol car doors opened. 2 officers. The driver was a hulking figure, Officer Richard "Rick" Halloway. Jay didn't know his name yet, but he knew the type. Halloway walked with his chest puffed out, thumbs hooked near his belt, his sunglasses reflecting the suburban glare. He was a little under 50, stocky but muscular, with a thick mustache that looked like it came straight out of the 80s. His body language screamed territorial aggression. The passenger was younger, a woman, Officer Emily Stanton. She looked like she'd just stepped out of the academy, her uniform a little too big, her hand resting nervously near the radio. She was a few steps behind Halloway, looking around as if expecting an ambush. "Here we go," Jay whispered to himself. He kept his hands visible, resting on the 10 and 2 o'clock positions on the steering wheel. He rolled down the driver's side window as Halloway pulled up. Halloway didn't say hello, didn't ask, "How's it going?" She leaned over, placing a fleshy hand on the roof of the Tahoe and peering inside through her aviator sunglasses. "License and registration," Halloway barked. "No preamble." Jay turned his head slowly. He kept his voice calm, the practiced baritone of a man who had negotiated with kidnappers. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" I said, "License and registration," Holloway repeated, this time louder. He leaned closer, sniffing the air inside the car like a bloodhound. "You don't live here. I'm on duty," Jay said calmly. "I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in the inside pocket of my jacket. I'll get them now." This was the protocol. State, describe, move. Don't move a muscle. Holloway's hand reached down to his holster. The click of the restraint strap being released echoed off the quiet street. "I didn't ask for a life story. I asked for identification. Get out of the car." Jay frowned. This was escalating faster than usual. "Officer, I'm identifying myself as an FBI special agent. I'm on active surveillance. If I get out of the car, I'll break cover." "Break cover?" Holloway laughed. A harsh barking sound. "You're sitting in a suspicious vehicle in a high-priority neighborhood, idling. We've had reports of robberies. You fit the description." Jay knew for a fact there hadn't been a robbery in this zip code in 6 months. He checked the crime statistics daily. "What description is that, officer?" "The one that says black man in a car." Holloway's face twitched instantly. The vein in his neck bulged. He ripped the door handle off. It was locked. "Open this door or I'll break the window," Holloway yelled. Officer Stanton tentatively stepped forward. "Rick, maybe let him show ID first." "He said he's with the FBI." "Shut up, Stanton," Holloway snapped without looking at her. "He's wasting time. He's probably throwing away drugs or a gun right now. Open the door." Jay weighed his options. If he refused, Holloway would break the window, drag him out, and the scene would be even bigger. If he complied, he'd lose control of the situation. But he'd save the taxpayer the cost of a window and potentially save his own life if Holloway was as trigger-happy as he seemed. "Okay," Jay said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming cold and hard. "I'm unlocking the door. I'm getting out. But you need to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Get out." Jay unlocked the door. Before he could even open it all the way, Holloway grabbed him by the lapel of his expensive suit and yanked him. Jay stumbled as he was pulled to the asphalt. He was 6'1" and in excellent physical condition, a former college linebacker, but he allowed himself to be moved. The resistance now would give Holloway the excuse he was desperately seeking. "Hands on the hood now." Holloway slammed Jay against the hot metal of the Tahoe. The impact rattled Jay's teeth, but he didn't growl. He spread his legs and placed his hands on the ceiling, fingers spread. "My badge," Jay said clearly, speaking loudly enough for the body camera on Holloway's chest to pick up perfectly, "is in my inside left pocket. My service weapon is holstered under my left arm. Don't touch it unless you want a federal investigation on your desk in the morning." "Gun?" Holloway yelled, ignoring the context. "He has a gun. Stanton, cover me." Stanton gripped his weapon, but pointed it down, looking terrified. "Rick, he told you he has it. He's complying. He's armed and dangerous." Holloway jammed his knee into the back of Jay's knee, forcing him to give way. Jay dropped to his knees, gravel digging into his suit trousers. Holloway grabbed Jay's right wrist and twisted it back, forcing it toward his shoulder blades. The pain was sharp, like a torn rotator cuff. Jay gritted his teeth, his eyes narrowed. "Officer Holloway," Jay said, reading the badge now inches from his face, "you're making a mistake you can't fix. Check my pocket. Look at my credentials." "I'm checking for my safety first." Holloway patted Jay down aggressively. He found the gun. He ripped the Sig Sauer from its holster and slid it across the pavement, scratching the finish of a government-issued firearm. "That's federal property," Jay stated. His voice was becoming robotic, distant. He was memorizing every second. 2:17 in the afternoon. Excessive force. Failure to verify credentials. Unlawful detention. Holloway finally reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out his leather wallet. He opened it. The gold FBI shield gleamed in the sunlight. The photo ID next to it read clearly, Jeremiah Cross, Special Agent. Holloway stared at it. For a second, just a heartbeat, silence returned. Stanton leaned over. Seeing the badge, his eyes widened. "Rick," he whispered. "That's real. That's a real badge. Let him get up." But Holloway's ego was a runaway train. He'd already committed. He'd yelled. He'd used force. And the neighbors were starting to come out onto their porches. Mrs. Gable, from number 42, held her iPhone aloft. A landscaping crew across the street had set up their lawnmowers and was watching. If Holloway backed down now, he'd look like a fool. If he doubled down, he could claim the license plate looked fake. He could claim Jay was putting up a fight. In Holloway's mind, the truth was malleable. Holloway slammed the wallet shut and stuffed it in his own pocket. "Fake," Holloway announced loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Do you buy this stuff online?" Jay's blood ran cold. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was malice. "You know that's legitimate. Call your supervisor. Call the field office. The number is on the back of the card." "I'm arresting you for impersonating a police officer, resisting arrest, and possession of an illegal firearm," Holloway said, pulling out her handcuffs. Click, click. The steel bit into Jay's wrists. "You're under arrest." Holloway sneered, leaning close to Jay's ear. "You think a suit and a fake badge make you untouchable? Not in my town, kid." The racial subtext wasn't subtle. It was a sledgehammer. Jay stood up as Holloway dragged him by the chain of the handcuffs. He turned to face the officer. Jay didn't look defeated. He looked like a judge passing sentence. "Officer Stanton," Jay said, fixing his gaze on the rookie, "you're witnessing a felony, disenfranchisement under color of law. Title 18, United States Code, Section 242. Failure to intervene makes you an accomplice." Stanton flinched. He looked at Holloway. "Rick, we should check the badge number. Central can check it in 10 seconds. I said, put him in the car. Holloway shoved Jay toward the patrol car. Jay didn't fight. He walked with dignity, despite his hands being tied behind his back. He sat in the back of the narrow plastic seat in the police interceptor. The smell of stale vomit and disinfectant filled his nostrils. Holloway slammed the door. Inside the car, trapped behind the cage, Jay took a deep breath. He closed his eyes. He wasn't praying. He was counting. He knew something was wrong. Jay wasn't alone on stakeout. It was part of a coordinated operation. His partner, Special Agent Mike O'Reilly, was 2 blocks away in a surveillance van, and Jay was wearing a microphone. Everything he'd just said, the racial slur, the dismissal of the badge, the refusal to check credentials, had been recorded and streamed live to the Chicago field office. Jay glanced at the digital clock on the dashboard of the patrol car. 2:21 p.m. "Mike," he whispered, knowing the microphone taped to his chest under his shirt would pick him up. "Come get me and bring the cavalry." Outside, Holloway was strutting. He was putting on a show for the crowd. He walked over to Mrs. Gable, who was still filming. "Nothing to see here, folks. Just taking some trash off the street," Holloway boomed. He picked up Jay's gun from the pavement, carelessly handling it by the trigger guard, a massive security breach, and tossed it into the passenger seat of his patrol car. He turned to Stanton. "You drive. I'll fill out the arrest sheet on the way. We're going to charge him with everything we can think of. Disorderly conduct, assaulting an officer." "He didn't touch you, Rick," Stanton said, his voice shaking. He thought about it. Holloway grumbled. "Get in." They got into the car. Holloway turned around, grinning at Jay through the cage. "Comfortable back there? Don't worry. The county jail is worse." Jay looked at him, his face completely expressionless. "He's got about 3 minutes left, officer." 3 minutes for what? Holloway laughed. "Until your life ends." Jay said softly. Not your heartbeat, but your life as you know it. Holloway rolled his eyes. Yeah. Tell that to the judge. He slammed his fist on the dashboard. Come on, Stanton. Stanton started the car. He released the brake, but before he could touch the gas, a siren blared. Not the distant wail of an ambulance, the sharp, aggressive whoop-whoop of a federal siren. A huge black SUV, identical to Jay's, but with lights in the grille flashing red and blue, screeched around the corner, blocking the street in front of them. Then another came from behind, boxing them in. Then a third. Tires squealed. Doors flew open. Men in tactical gear with the words FBI emblazoned in bright yellow on their backs rushed out. They didn't look like local cops. They moved with the terrifying speed of a SWAT team. Holloway froze. His hand went to the doorknob, but he didn't open it. What is this? He stammered. Who are these guys? Jay leaned forward against the cage. A small, cold smile finally touched his lips. That, Jay said, is the twist. The silence of Sycamore Drive, previously disturbed only by birdsong and the whir of lawnmowers, was now shattered by a cacophony of shouts, slamming doors, and the crackle of high-frequency radios. Officer Rick Holloway remained frozen in the driver's seat of his patrol car. His brain, usually quick to categorize the world as threat or civilian, was failing. The visual data in front of him made no sense. Police officers were the predators in this ecosystem, not the prey. Yet 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans had just executed a sharp cornering maneuver on his vehicle, a tactic usually reserved for terrorists or cartel leaders. Rick. Officer Emily Stanton's voice was high-pitched, bordering on hysterical. Rick, put the car in neutral. Put your hands up. Shut up, Holloway hissed, though his voice lacked its usual venom. It was thin, greedy. Is this a mistake or a joke? Probably a movie shoot. They didn't have a permit for this. He clung to the illusion like a lifeline. Police car driver. A voice boomed from a speaker in the lead SUV. It wasn't a request. It was the voice of God. Turn off the engine. Throw the keys out the window. Keep your hands visible. Inside the patrol car's cage, Jeremiah Cross stared at the back of Holloway's neck. He saw the sweat beginning to form at his hairline. I'd take their advice, Rick, Jay said calmly. That's Special Agent Michael Riley on the phone. He has very little tolerance for nonsense. Holloway jerked his head around, his face turning purple. You set me up. You set this up. I tried to show you my ID, Jay replied. You chose not to look. Driver, now. The loudspeaker crackled again. Holloway's hand trembled as he reached for the ignition. He turned the key. The engine sputtered to a halt. He dropped the keys out the window. They hit the asphalt. Exit the vehicle. Walk backward toward my voice. Hands on your head. Holloway opened the door. The afternoon heat hit him, but he felt cool. He stepped out. He glanced to his left and right. There were at least 12 agents. They wore heavy body armor over navy blue uniforms. They held M4 carbines at low alert, barrels pointed at the ground, but ready to rise in a split second. These weren't neighborhood cops. This was the FBI's regional SWAT team. The heavyweights were called in for high-risk orders. Holloway interlaced his fingers behind his head. He started to back away. Officer Holloway, a voice said behind him, not over a loudspeaker this time, but up close. Stop! Get on your knees! I'm a police officer, Holloway yelled, finding a fragment of his old bravado. You can't do this. I have a badge. Get on your knees or we'll make you. Holloway collapsed. He sank into the asphalt, gravel biting into his uniform pants. 2 officers approached. They didn't treat him with the professional courtesy usually extended between law enforcement agencies. They treated him like a hostile combatant. One officer grabbed Holloway's left wrist, the other his right. Their arms were twisted down and a pair of flexible zip ties, strong plastic ties, were placed around their wrists. "Hey, that's too tight," Holloway yelled. "Quiet," the officer to his right growled. Meanwhile, a different team moved to the passenger side. Officer Stanton was already out of the car, crying, her hands up. "I didn't do anything," she sobbed. I told him to check the badge." "Secure her," a tall officer ordered. "Check her gun. Is it clear?" "Clear," another officer shouted, taking Stanton's gun away. They didn't handcuff her, but escorted her away from Holloway, separating the witnesses. Then the focus shifted to the back seat of the patrol car. The tall officer, Michael O'Reilly, approached the rear door. He had red hair streaked with gray at the temples and a face that looked like it was carved from granite. He didn't look happy. He looked apocalyptic. He opened the rear door. "Are you okay, Jay?" O'Reilly asked, his voice instantly shifting from a commanding shout to a concerned friend. Jay shifted in the plastic seat, offering his back to the door so O'Reilly could reach the handcuffs. "My shoulders are a little stiff." He twisted it pretty well. "But I'm fine." "Key!" O'Reilly barked over his shoulder. An officer handed him a universal handcuff key. O'Reilly unlocked the handcuffs. Jay stepped out of the patrol car. He rubbed his wrists where red marks were already forming. He straightened his suit jacket, brushed a speck of dust from his lapel, and took a deep breath of fresh air. He walked over to where Holloway was kneeling. The scene was a tableau of humiliation. Holloway, the king of his small patrol sector, was now kneeling before the man he'd called Kid 5 minutes earlier. Jay looked at him. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just looked disappointed. "Officer Holloway," Jay said. "I'm Special Agent Jeremiah Cross. I'm the lead investigator on the RICO case against corrupt zoning operations in this district. You've just compromised a 2-year federal investigation." Holloway looked up, blinking against the sun. "RICO? What are you talking about?" "You were just sitting there." "I was waiting for a messenger to deliver a package of cash to Councilman Penske," Jay said, pointing to the house 3 doors down. "A messenger who just walked past us while you were yelling about my registration." Holloway's face went pale. "I didn't know." "Ignorance is no shield for incompetence," Jay said, "and it's certainly no shield for civil rights violations." A black sedan pulled up to the perimeter. The door opened, and a man in a charcoal suit stepped out. He moved with a weight of authority that made even the SWAT team straighten up. "That's ASAC," O'Reilly whispered to Jay. "Assistant Special Agent in Charge Thornton." He was listening on the microphone. ASIC Thornton went straight to the SWAT team, past Stanton, and stopped in front of Holloway. Thornton was a small man with glasses, but his eyes were like lasers. "Lift him up," Thornton ordered the officers. They lifted Holloway to his feet. Thornton leaned in close. "Officer, in my 25 years on the job, I've heard a lot of things through a microphone. But what I heard you say to Agent Cross today, that was something else. That was a career-ending performance." "He resisted," Holloway stammered, trying the lie once more. "He refused to come out." Thornton reached into his pocket and pulled out a digital recorder. He pressed a button. Click. Holloway's voice. Short recording. "You don't live here. You fit the description." "Open this door or I'll break the window." Jay's voice. "I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in the inside pocket of my jacket." Holloway's voice. "I didn't ask for a biography. Get out of here." Thornton stopped the recording. He identified himself immediately. "You escalated immediately." And then Thornton pressed the button again. Holloway's voice. "Not in my town, kid." The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. The neighbors were all watching now. Mrs. Gable was still filming. The landscaping crew had moved closer. Holloway realized with a sinking feeling in his gut that the audio wasn't just on Thornton's recorder. It was probably on Jay's hidden microphone, on his own body camera, if he hadn't conveniently forgotten to turn it on, which he hadn't this time, and chances were the neighbors had recorded it. "You're going to be prosecuted," Thornton said coldly, "but not by your department. We'll take you into custody under a federal statute. You can't arrest a police officer for doing his job," Holloway yelled, struggling against the plastic handcuffs. "I've qualified immunity." Jay stepped forward. Qualified immunity protects officials who make reasonable errors in the line of duty. It doesn't protect those who knowingly violate constitutional rights. You saw the badge. You called it fake without checking. That's malicious, Rick. That pierces the veil of immunity. "Officer Stanton," Thornton called. Stanton jumped. "Yes, sir. Come here." He came closer, his legs shaking. "You suggested checking the badge," Thornton said. "We heard that on the wire. He tried to de-escalate." "I tried. He wouldn't listen," Stanton stammered. "That fact is the only reason he's not in handcuffs right now," Thornton said. "But he's going to write a statement, a very long, very detailed statement. And if you leave out a single comma, you'll go down with him. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Absolutely, sir." Holloway looked at his partner. "Emily, don't tell them anything. Union rep? Call the union rep." Stanton looked at Holloway. He looked at the FBI agents. He looked at Jay, the man he'd almost seen get beaten. "Shut up, Rick," he said quietly. Processing the scene took hours. Sycamore Drive was cordoned off with yellow tape that read "Federal Crime Scene," which confused local residents who were used to seeing the Oak Creek PD's blue and white tape. Holloway had been placed in the back of one of the Suburbans, the air conditioning turned off. He was sweating, brooding, and waiting. Outside, the dynamic was shifting from tactics to legal matters. Jay was standing by the hood of his Tahoe, drinking from a bottle of water O'Reilly had given him. His shoulder ached, and he knew he'd have a massive bruise tomorrow, but the adrenaline kept the pain at bay. "So, O'Reilly," he said, leaning against the fender. "The courier's gone," Jay said, shaking his head. He saw the lights, saw the cruiser, probably turned around 3 blocks away. "Penske won't get the money today. He'll freak out. He might start shredding documents. We can get a search warrant for Penske's place based on the wiretap we already have," O'Reilly suggested. "It's complicated, but we might be able to save him." "Maybe," Jay said. He glanced at the police cruiser, still parked crooked on the street. "But right now, I'm more interested in what we found in Holloway's car." "You mean something other than your gun?" "I mean the laptop," Jay said. "When I was checking my license plates, I saw something on its screen. It wasn't the standard NCIC database." O'Reilly frowned. "What was it?" "It looked like a private message board, something encrypted. He hadn't closed it when he jumped." O'Reilly signaled to a tech officer. "Get the data out of the patrol car's laptop. Clone it now." As the tech team got to work, a new vehicle arrived. It was a standard Oak Creek police chief's car. Chief Miller was a man in his 60s, desperately trying to hold on to a job that was becoming too complex for him. He walked under the yellow tape as if he were walking to his own execution. He approached Chief Thornton and Jay. "Agent Thornton," Miller said, extending a hand that Thornton ignored. "I got the call. I can't believe it." "Believe it," Chief Thornton said. "Your officer assaulted a federal agent. I'm sure it was a misunderstanding," Miller tried, dabbing his sweat with a handkerchief. "Rick Holloway is a veteran. He's old school. Maybe a little rough around the edges, but he gets results." "Old school?" Jay interjected. He stepped out from behind Thornton. Chief Miller looked at Jay. He saw the dust on the suit, the red marks on the wrists. "This is Agent Cross," Thornton introduced himself. "Chief," Jay said, "your old-school officer profiled me, assaulted me, and illegally detained me. But here's the part you'll be interested in. Jay pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, a printout the tech agent had just handed him. "We just got the logs from Holloway's onboard computer," Jay said. "You know you guys are supposed to check license plates through the state database." "Of course," Miller said. "Holloway didn't check my license plate through the state database," Jay said. "He checked it through a private Discord server." Miller blinked. "A what?" "A chat room," Jay explained. "A private group called the Blue Wall. He posted my license plate number and a picture of me sitting in the car. He asked the group, 'I've got a target at 4002 Sycamore, in a nice car, causing trouble in the neighborhood. Green light to stalk.'" Miller's mouth opened, but no sound came out. And Jay continued, his voice hardening. Someone replied, "A user named Watchman." The response was, "Give him hell. Make him run." Jay approached the chief. "This wasn't just a bad call, Chief. This was coordinated gang activity operating within your department." Holloway wasn't checking for warrants. He was checking with his friends to see if he could have some fun. The implications were nuclear. It meant Holloway wasn't a lone wolf. It meant there was a cell of officers in Oak Creek and maybe other departments sharing objectives, encouraging harassment, and circumventing legal protocols. "This is impossible," Miller whispered. "This is going to be national news," Thornton said. "We're going to seize all the servers in your precinct. We're going to confiscate all personal devices from the officers on that shift, and we're going to immediately launch a pattern of conduct investigation at the Oak Creek Police Department." Miller glanced at Holloway, who was watching from the window of the Suburban. The chief's face went from shock to fury. He realized his department was about to be dismantled because he couldn't keep his ego in check for 5 minutes. "Can I speak with him?" Miller asked. "No," Thornton said. "He's a federal prisoner. You can speak with his lawyer if you can find one." At that moment, a sleek silver Mercedes pulled up to the perimeter. A man in a smart navy suit got out. He carried a leather briefcase and walked with the confident stride of a man who earned $800 an hour. "That," Jay said, checking his watch, "would be the lawyer." It was Jonathan Sterling. The Jonathan Sterling. He was a defense attorney known for taking on high-profile cases involving police misconduct, usually defending the officers. He was the regular contact for the police fraternal order. Sterling slipped under the tape, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Gentlemen, what a party! I represent Officer Holloway. I demand to see my client immediately." Thornton blocked his path. "Mr. Sterling, you're quick. I have an advance from the union," Sterling said smoothly. "Now, I understand there was some friction between agencies. Let's not blow this out of proportion." "My client made a decision. We can discuss an apology, perhaps a drop charge." Jay laughed. It was a dry, humiliating sound. "Mr. Sterling," Jay said, "your client is currently being held under United States Code 18, Section 242, subsection 111, for assaulting a federal agent, and we are currently drafting charges for conspiracy to violate civil rights based on the digital evidence we just seized." Sterling paused. He looked at Jay, then at the tech agents cloning the laptop. His smile faltered for a split second. "Conspiracy?" Sterling asked, his tone faltering. "That's a stretch, Agent. Is it?" Jay held up the printout of the chat log. He requested instructions on whether to harass a citizen based on race from a private network. That's conspiracy. And since I'm a federal agent, that makes it conspiracy to obstruct a federal agent. Sterling snatched the paper. He read it. He squinted. He was a shark, and he'd just realized there was blood in the water, but it was his client's blood. "I need 5 minutes with him," Sterling said, his tone now serious. "He has 2, Thornton said, "with an agent present." "Attorney-client privilege," Sterling snapped. "Not when the device used to commit the crime is still in the car he's sitting in," Thornton retorted. "We're securing the scene. You can yell at him through the window." Sterling walked toward the Suburban. Holloway saw him and started banging on the glass. "Get me out of here, Sterling. They broke my wrist. They kidnapped me." Sterling signaled the officer to roll the window down an inch. "Rick," Sterling said, his voice low and harsh, "shut up." "What? You're supposed to help me." "I can't help you if you keep talking," Sterling hissed. "They have the chat logs, Rick. They have the blue wall chats." Holloway stopped banging. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. They looked at the laptop. "Yes," Sterling said. "And because of that, this isn't a traffic stop anymore. It's a RICO case against you." Holloway leaned back in his seat. "But Watchman told me to." Sterling closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Did you just identify an accomplice while a federal agent is 2 feet away holding a recorder?" The agent on duty smiled amiably. "I'm done," Sterling said, taking a step back. "I need to make some calls. I need to see if the syndicate will cover this. Intentional criminal conspiracy usually voids their coverage, Rick." "You can't leave me," Holloway yelled as Sterling walked away. Jay watched the lawyer retreat. He turned to O'Reilly. "You know what the worst part is?" Jay asked. "What?" "If I'd only checked the badge," Jay said, "I would have let him go with a warning. He would have been home having dinner in an hour. Now he's going to prison for 10 years. "Calm down," O'Reilly said, spitting on the ground. "It's nasty. We're not done yet," Jay said, glancing down the street toward Councilman Penske's house. The lights in the councilman's house had just gone out. The big fish is trying to get away. Holloway was just the appetizer. Jay touched his earpiece. "Tactical. This is Cross. We're pivoting. The primary target, Penske, is probably destroying evidence. We have probable cause based on the thin slate of circumstances created by the compromised surveillance. We're heading to the house now." "Roger." The radio crackled. Jay looked at Holloway one last time. "Stay put, officer. The show's just getting started." The transition from a street confrontation to a full-scale federal raid happened with the terrifying precision of thunder. For Rick Holloway, sitting handcuffed in the back of the FBI Suburban, the world had become a surreal nightmare. He watched through the tinted glass as the tactical team reformed. They weren't looking at him anymore. They were looking at the house at 408 Sycamore Drive, the home of Alderman Arthur Penske. Holloway had greeted Penske the day before. He'd said at neighborhood watch meetings that Penske was a pillar of the community. He'd spent years patrolling this street, effectively acting as Penske's unpaid private security detail, scaring off suspicious cars to keep the alderman happy. Now he watched as Agent Jeremiah Cross, the man Holloway had tried to humiliate, donned a heavy body armor with the letters FBI emblazoned in bright yellow. Cross moved with a fluidity that Holloway, with his stiff back and bad knees, had never possessed. "Entry tools up," Jay ordered, his voice clear over the radio frequency Holloway could faintly hear from the front seat of the Suburban. "Penske's scared. If he destroys the ledger, we lose the connection to the cartel. We're going hard. We're going fast." The team came up the entry. Holloway felt a pang of nausea in his stomach. Cartel connection. Penske was just a zoning official. He approved shopping malls. What was the FBI talking about? "Pickle up," Jay ordered. 6 agents lined up against the pristine white siding of Penske's colonial mansion. O'Reilly carried the battering ram. "FBI search warrant," Jay bellowed. His voice was a weapon, projecting deep and loud, rattling the windows. "Open the door. Quiet. Hit it!" The sound of the battering ram smashing through the massive oak door was painfully loud. It took one blow. The door swung open. "Come on! Come on! Come on!" Holloway watched the agents flood the house. He saw the flash of tactical lights sweeping across the foyer. He heard shouts, muffled by the walls, but unmistakable in their intensity. Inside the house, chaos reigned. Jay moved down the hallway, his weapon raised. "Federal agents, show your hands." A maid screamed and threw herself to the floor in the kitchen. "Secure her. Keep moving." Jay gestured toward the back of the house, toward the study. That's where the shredder would be. They reached the study's double doors. They were locked. "Mike, take care of it." O'Reilly didn't use the battering ram this time. He used a mule kick, breaking the latch. The doors flew open. Councilman Penske was standing by the fireplace. He wasn't shredding documents. He was burning them. A metal wastebasket was ablaze. Smoke rose toward the high ceiling. Penske, a man usually seen in tailored suits, was in his bathrobe, frantically feeding thick ledgers into the fire. "FBI, get away from the fire," Jay yelled. Penske looked up, his eyes wild. "You can't come in here. I have immunity. I'm an elected official. You're under arrest for money laundering and extortion." Jay rushed forward. Penske tried to throw a black hard drive into the flames. Jay lunged. He didn't knock down the man. He knocked down the evidence. Jay's gloved hand snatched the hard drive out of the air inches from the fire. He felt the heat sear his wrist, but he held on. O'Reilly slammed Penske into a tackle that would have been an NFL highlight reel moment. The councilman hit his Persian rug face with a thud. He was gasping for air. "Hands behind your back. Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Penske gasped, his face pressed into the wool. He tried to destroy evidence in front of federal agents. O'Reilly snarled, handcuffing him. "That's obstruction. Add 5 years to the sentence." Jay stood, clutching the hard drive. He stared at the burning wastebasket. He grabbed a heavy vase of flowers from the desk and poured water into the bin. The fire hissed and died down, leaving the half-burned papers soggy but legible. "Secure the scene," Jay gasped, his heart pounding. "Have the fire department check the chimney for updrafts of loose papers. I want every scrap of ash bagged." 10 minutes later, the front door opened again. Rick Halloway, still watching from the car, saw the impossible. Councilman Arthur Penske, the man who controlled the police budget, the man Halloway had idolized as the epitome of success, was led away in handcuffs. He was crying. He looked small, pathetic, and guilty. Penske saw the police cruiser in the street. He saw Halloway in the back of the FBI Suburban. "Halloway!" Penske yelled, his voice cracking. "You idiot! You brought them here! You led them straight to me!" Halloway flinched as if he'd been slapped. Jay came out behind the prisoner, holding the evidence bag containing the hard drive. He walked toward the Suburban where Halloway was being held. He signaled to the agent to open the door. The blast of cool air hit Halloway's sweaty face. "Did you see that, Rick?" Jay asked, pointing at the tearful councilman. Halloway nodded, dazed. "That man's been laundering money for the Sinaloa cartel for 5 years, Jay said. "He's been poisoning this city with fentanyl money, laundering it through construction projects. We spent 2 years building this case. We were waiting for the money shipment to catch him red-handed." Jay leaned forward, his eyes cold. "But because you wanted to act tough with a black man in a nice car, the courier got scared. We lost the money. We almost lost the hard drive. You didn't protect this neighborhood, Rick. You protected a monster, and you almost let him get away." Halloway looked down at his hands, bound with plastic. The narrative in his head that he was the thin blue line, the protector, was shattering. He wasn't the hero. He was the clown who set off the alarm. "I didn't know that," Halloway whispered. "That," Jay said, slamming the door. "It'll be on your tombstone." The interrogation room in the FBI's Chicago field office was a sensory deprivation study. The walls were made of gray soundproofing foam. The table was bolted to the floor. The air was frigid, intentionally kept cold to keep suspects uncomfortable and awake. Rick Halloway had been sitting there for 3 hours. His handcuffs had been replaced with steel ones chained to the ring on the table. He was thirsty. He needed to use the restroom, but mostly he was terrified. The door opened. He was expecting his lawyer, Jonathan Sterling. Instead, Officer J. Cross walked in, followed by Officer Thornton, no lawyer. "Where's Sterling?" Holloway demanded, his voice rasping. "I invoked my right to counsel." Jay sat down, placing a thick file on the metal table. "Mr. Sterling is currently occupied." "Occupied with what? He's my lawyer." "Actually," Thornton said, still standing, "Mr. Sterling represents the Fraternal Order of Police. He represents the Union, and 20 minutes ago, the Union voted to revoke his membership and legal protection." Holloway felt the blood drain from his face. "What? They can't do that." "They can," Jay said. "There's a clause in your contract that addresses improper conduct and criminal wrongdoing when news broke that you were running a racial profiling network on a private server. Well, the Union decided you were too radioactive to touch." "They let you go, Rick. You're on your own." Holloway collapsed. The system he'd served, the blue wall he thought would always protect him, had just dropped him off a cliff to save itself. "I want a public defender," Holloway whispered. "You'll have one," Jay said. "But first let's hear a story. Your story." Jay opened the file. He pulled out pictures, not of Holloway, but of the laptop's chat logs. "We cracked the encryption on the Blue Wall's Discord server," Jay said. "It's ugly, Rick. Very ugly. Jokes about beating suspects, competitions over who can write the most fabricated ticket, but the worst part is the hierarchy." Jay tapped a profile picture of a user named Watchman. "This guy," Jay said. "Watchman, he's the ringleader. He tells you who to target. He gave you the order to attack me today. Who is he?" Holloway shook his head. I can't say." "Why not?" Thornton asked. "Loyalty to the people who just fired your lawyer? To the people who let you take the fall for a federal civil rights violation?" "You don't understand," Holloway said, his eyes watering. "If I talk, I'm a rat. I'll die in prison. A cop in the general population is bad. A snitch cop. I won't last a week." Jay leaned forward. His voice was no longer angry. It was dangerously lenient. "Rick, look at the numbers. You're facing 10 years for disenfranchisement, another 5 for weapon enhancement, another 5 for conspiracy. You're looking at 20 years. You'll be 70 when you get out. You'll die in prison anyway." Jay slid a piece of paper across the table. "This is a cooperation agreement." Jay said, "Talk. Tell us who Watchman is. Tell me every officer involved in this network. In return, we recommend a 36-month sentence in a minimum security federal camp. We'll put you in protective custody. You'll survive." Holloway stared at the paper. It was a lifeline, but it required him to betray the only identity he had left. "I need to know I'm safe," Holloway stammered. "You're only safe if you hand over the snake's head," Jay said. "Who's the Watchman?" Holloway closed his eyes. He thought about the barbecue at the precinct last July. He thought about the man who had patted him on the back and told him to keep the streets clean. The man who had given him access to the server. "It's..." Holloway's voice cracked. "It's Sergeant Miller." Jay paused. "The chief's brother, the sergeant on duty." "Yes," Holloway sobbed. "And the chief knows Chief Miller is the overlord of the chat. They run it together. They use the tickets and the arrests to inflate the stats and get federal grants. It's all a game." The silence in the room was heavy. This was bigger than a few bad apples. The whole orchard was rotten. "Thornton," Jay said without looking away, "get the arrest warrant for the chief." Jay looked back at Holloway. "You did well, Rick. Finally." "Does this mean I can go home?" Holloway asked, a pathetic hope in his eyes. Jay stood and gathered the files. He looked at the man who had tried to ruin him. He felt a moment of pity, but it was fleeting. "No, Rick," Jay said. It means you won't die in prison, but you'll never go home again. Not to the life you had. Jay knocked on the door. Guard, take him to his cell. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago was besieged by media vans. The headline on the CNN van screen read, OK Creek Police Scandal, Sentencing Day. Jeremiah Cross stood on the steps, adjusting his tie. The wind off the lake was cold, but the sun was shining. Beside him were Agent O'Reilly and Isaac Thornton. Inside the courtroom, the final act of the drama had just concluded. Rick Holloway stood before the judge. He looked 20 years older. He had shaved his mustache in the county jail. His suit fit ill. He had lost 30 kilos from the stress. The courtroom was packed. In the front row sat Holloway's ex-wife. She wasn't there to support him. She was there with her divorce lawyer to ensure the garnishment of his alimony was finalized. She wasn't looking at him. Judge Harrison, a stern woman with zero tolerance for corruption, adjusted her glasses. Mr. Holloway, she said, you have cooperated with the government. Your testimony was instrumental in the indictment of former Chief Miller and Sergeant Miller, who now face significant prison sentences. The court acknowledges this. Holloway nodded, hope swelling in his chest. Perhaps parole, perhaps house arrest. However, the judge continued, her voice hardening like concrete, you were the spearhead of a culture of terror. You used your badge like a club. You targeted Officer Cross not for what he did, but for who he was. You betrayed the public trust in the most visceral way possible. The judge glanced at Jay, sitting in the prosecutor's box. Officer Cross, do you have a victim impact statement? Jay stood. He walked to the podium. I didn't have notes. Your Honor, Jay said, I'm a trained federal agent. When Mr. Holloway assaulted me, I knew how to de-escalate. I knew the law. I had a team listening. Jay paused, looking directly at Holloway. But I keep thinking about the man who sat in that car before me, the teenager walking home from school, the father going to the grocery store. They didn't have a microphone. They didn't have a support team. When they encountered Officer Holloway, they had no voice. Today, the system worked because I'm part of the system, but justice shouldn't require a badge to function. Officer Holloway didn't just break the law. He broke the promise that keeps this society from descending into chaos. It should serve as an example that the badge is a heavy burden, not a free pass. Jay sat down. The judge nodded. Richard Holloway, I sentence you to 48 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Your pension is revoked. You are permanently barred from holding any position in law enforcement or security. Your incarceration is immediate. The gavel fell. It sounded like a gunshot. No! He yelled as the marshals rushed over. Please, I helped you. I helped you. The marshals didn't care. They turned him around, cuffing his hands behind his back. The same click-click sound he had inflicted on Jay. As they led him out the side door, Holloway looked back. His eyes met Jay's for the last time. There was no anger in Jay's eyes, only a cold, professional indifference. Holloway realized with crushing finality that he was no longer a villain in Jay's story. He was just paperwork. Outside the courthouse, Jay walked down the stairs. Reporters swarmed him. Agent Cross! Agent Cross! How do you feel about the verdict? Is the FBI investigating other departments? Jay paused before the microphones. He looked into the cameras. Justice was served today, Jay said. But let's be clear, this was not a victory. A police department was dismantled. A city councilman is in jail. A family was destroyed. This was a tragedy that could have been prevented with 5 seconds of respect. That's the lesson. Respect the law. Respect people. Or eventually the law will come for you. He took a step back. O'Reilly patted him on the shoulder. Beer, my God. Yeah. Jay grinned. But you're paying. Technically, I'm still on duty until I file this final report. Deal. They walked away. Two men in suits disappearing into the city crowd. Behind them, news screens displayed the mugshot of Rick Holloway, a man who had it all and lost it all in 7 minutes because he couldn't let go of his ego. Karma hadn't just struck, it had cleared the board, and that's how 7 minutes of arrogance destroyed a lifetime of service. Rick Holloway thought he was the predator, but he didn't realize he was swimming in an ocean with much bigger sharks. He lost his job, his freedom, and his legacy. All because he judged a book by its cover and didn't bother to read the plaque inside. It's a brutal reminder. In the age of cameras and accountability, the truth always finds a way to come out. Holloway's blue wall of silence didn't protect him. It collapsed on him. What do you think? Did Holloway deserve the 4 years? Or should the sentence have been harsher, considering he was part of a larger conspiracy? And would you have remained as quiet as Agent Cross? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale of instant karma and justice served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any new stories. We post dramas inspired by real life every week. Thanks for watching and stay safe.